It's a beautiful Wednesday morning. How's everybody doing? We're going to talk Fred Warner and his potential new record contract with the 49ers today. I had a big breakdown on The Athletic, and I am happy to share my screen to go through all of this stuff because we may see history this offseason with Fred Warner and the 49ers. But it's going to be complicated. So I have just shared my screen right now to give you guys a preview of what we're going to go over today. We're going to talk about the top NFL linebacker contracts, what Fred Warner might try to break this offseason. We're going to talk about potential complications because Darius Leonard from the Colts is also going to be gunning for a record deal between now and training camp. We're going to talk about the 49ers salary cap situation right here because it's very tight. And as an extension of the 49ers salary cap situation, we will discuss how they made some room to potentially sign Fred Warner. So let's get started with this because I think this is one of the most anticipated pieces of offseason news for the 49ers. And you'll see in the comment section there, I have already pinned the link to my article about Fred Warner's potential new contract this morning. The market standard right now is held by Seattle's Bobby Wagner. We know multiple-time All-Pro, great player, probably still considered the best linebacker in football, at least in certain facets of the game. But I think Fred Warner and your Darius Leonards and those types of players are either creeping up on him really fast or they've already surpassed him. And the reason I don't know if it's completely clear at this point is because Wagner for several years has brought so much to the game here cerebrally. And I know that Fred Warner does as well, but Bobby Wagner is the veteran. Bobby Wagner is a player who's done it for, all-time defenses with the Seahawks earlier in the past decade. And now the torch is being passed on to the younger generation of linebackers. And I think that Fred Warner and the Colts' Darius Leonard really exemplify the younger generation of linebackers. They're getting lighter. They're getting faster. They can cover. And because of this versatility, they're going to command huge money. And just the way that contracts work, you combine those two, factors. You combine the fact that contracts are going to increase in value over time because the market inflates itself, and the fact that these linebackers are becoming more and more important in these NFL teams' strategies to combat spread offenses in the pass game. So these linebackers are almost becoming glorified defensive backs. Well, you put those two together and you have the recipe for market resets this offseason. Yes, it is a little early stream. Replying to Nate Thomas there in the comment section. Go ahead and toss in your questions. I just had a bowl of cereal. It's going to be a hot one today up here in the Sierra Nevada. I am in Shaver Lake. I'm training for a open water swim race on Saturday up in Huntington Lake, which is 7,500 feet. And it's going to be like 90 degrees even at 5,600 feet where I'm at right now. So I wanted to get out of here early, write my article today, which is going to be a mega mailbag. We can answer a ton of your questions. In fact, if you put a question on here, maybe I'll answer it in the article if I don't get to it on the YouTube video. But I got to get up to higher elevation to cool off. I don't want to be in 90 plus degree weather. In the Central Valley, if I go down, it's going to be like 110. So I definitely don't want to deal with that. Although I'm going to fly out to Vegas on Sunday, and it's going to be like 114 there. So lucky me. I'm really excited to get to see Circa, that new casino and hotel, and downtown Vegas, revitalizing Fremont Street. It's going to be a lot of fun out there. But before then, it's time to talk Fred Warner and the 49ers. So it's time to share the screen once more. Open the window, which has everything that we need about Warner, what Parag Marate might do with the 49ers side, and the salary cap situation. Let's begin by rewinding. The 49ers initially anticipated that this season would have a massive salary cap. And when I say initially anticipated, I mean their long-term plan back when Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took over in 2017. They charted the whole roster construction process out, and they anticipated that the salary cap would increase by a certain percentage every year. Now, the salary cap is directly tied to NFL revenues. The more money that the league makes, the higher the salary cap is. You could generally predict that the cap is going to rise every year because of this. Well, there could be significant bumps that are even more pronounced than the usual annual rise when there is a bigger revenue generating event. So, for example, the NFL has agreed to a new media deal with all of its TV partners and all of its distribution partners, and that's going to take effect in 2023. So because of that, experts expect the cap to skyrocket because this new media deal is really going to take advantage of the NFL's popularity. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch used an economic forecast back in 2017 to predict that the cap in 2021 would fall somewhere between $220 and $230 million. Kyle Shanahan even said this himself the other day on the TK show, which is one of the great podcasts on The Athletic. And Shanahan said, we were anticipating a cap up to $230 million when we initially sat down and charted our course throughout these several years. Well, surprise, pandemic hits, huge downstream economic effects because everything shuts down, businesses are suffering, and obviously there are no fans in the stands for the NFL. So the salary cap, which was initially projected by, to be at a floor of $210 million, and obviously by Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch to be maybe even $220 plus million, ended up being only $182.5 million. You could see that we're dealing with a difference, a drop off of $30 to $50 million for the 49ers to build their team here in 2021. And part of building their team here in 2021 has been to sign Fred Warner to a long-term contract. So take a look at the screen. The 49ers had to save some of that money that they lost. How did they do it? Well, I know some of you have complained that it's too small on the screen, so I'll try to zoom in here. Tell me if that's better for the chart. I think it is. It got bigger. This is how the 49ers saved money through who I call the big three. They traded Quan Alexander to the Saints last season. Weston Richburg retired, and the 49ers went through some maneuvering to make sure they maximized savings through him. That was mainly done by encouraging and asking Richburg, who was happy to oblige the 49ers, to wait until after June 1st to retire. He retired on June 2nd, so the 49ers don't deal with as big of a dead money hit in 2021. They take it on in 2022 instead. And they very creatively restructured Dee Ford's cap hit. And they also took out an insurance policy on Dee Ford's cap hit in 2019, and they're going to get some of that money back, $2.6 million to be exact, over 3 years. But because Dee Ford was willing to play ball with the 49ers and push some of the money owed to him to next season, the 49ers were able to save $11.2 million in this year's money with Dee Ford, $8 million with Weston Richburg, and $11 million with Quan Alexander. And guess what that totals? $30.2 million of 2021 savings. It's not a coincidence that that is almost exactly at the estimate of how much the 49ers lost because of the cap crunch due to the whole COVID after effects on the economy and on the NFL's revenue stream. So they saved those $30.2 million, and then they got really, really creative in free agency to create the roster that we see here. This is my 53-man roster projection that I'll also zoom in on so you could see. But I am predicting what it will cost to carry the 53 players I've projected. Now, might those 53 change? Of course. We don't know what's going to happen in training camp. But we do know, for example, that injuries are expensive. Why? Take a look at this. Injured list cap hits. I'll zoom in even further in case you can't see. Justin School, $894,000. This is all in millions, by the way. So 0.89 means $890,000 or $894,000 to be exact with Justin School. Justin School tore his ACL. Justin School was not on my original 53-man roster projection. So if you slide up here, offensive lineman, I did not have Justin School on here. I didn't think he was going to make the team. I wouldn't have been surprised if he made the team, but for my calculation purposes, I didn't think he was going to make the team. I thought the 49ers would waive him after training camp, and I thought they wouldn't owe Justin School $894,000. However, Justin School tore his ACL. When Justin School tore his ACL, The 49ers were all of a sudden on the hook for those $894,000. You can't just cut somebody because they're hurt. Like, they're protected by the CBA in the NFL. So to try to get the cap savings they need because they don't have a lot of money, the 49ers waived Justin Skule with an injury designation. When they waived him with an injury designation, the only way they'd be off the hook of his contract if some other team claimed the contract. No other team claimed the contract, so Justin Skule stays with the 49ers. He reverted back to their roster and is on injured reserve. So now Justin Skule, even though he might not have made the roster in the first place, now he's made the team through injured reserve, and the 49ers owe him $894,000 on the cap this season. That means that they only have $4.47 million of salary cap space against the 53-man roster by my estimate. That's a key word. By my estimate against the 53-man roster. Now, why is this an issue? Well, because we haven't given Fred Warner his extension yet. On my cap spreadsheet, which you can access through the article that I link there, you could see that, and this is interactive, so you can play around with it, but you could see that Fred Warner is due for a $3.6 million cap hit in 2021. Now, if you give him the extension that I draw up for the 49ers in the article and that I'm about to talk about, we'll give him right here, it'll become a $7 million cap hit instead. What does that $7 million cap hit do? It reduces the 49ers salary cap room to just over $1 million, which is not enough to do anything during the season. Maybe one thing, but I mean, you need to have more. The point is, I'm going to put this back to 3.63 because we haven't given Fred Warner's extension yet. The point is that you have to create room for a Fred Warner contract extension, especially if it's going to be of the record variety. Okay, so moving on. So what can we expect out of a Fred Warner contract extension? Let's look at today's article. This is the first graphic that I put in today's article. This is the linebacker market right now. The most recent deals have also been the richest ones. Bobby Wagner at the top, $18 million per year. That was a 3-year contract. CJ Mosley, that was a 5-year deal, $85 million. That ended up being $17 million per year. Wagner's edged him out, but Mosley, between a couple of roster bonuses, a signing bonus, and some fully guaranteed base salaries, has the record for fully guaranteed money for a linebacker of $43 million. That's why it's highlighted. Zach Cunningham from Houston, 4 years, $58. Miles Jack from Jacksonville, very aptly named, 4 years, $57 million. Right near each other at 14.5, 14.3, and then Deion Jones and the Falcons at 14.3. So you see that this is where the market is. You have a cluster of linebackers in the 14 million range, and then you have Bobby Wagner and CJ Mosley at the top at 18 and 17 million. Fred Warner is going to be gunning to beat out the top spot. And I think he deserves it because Fred Warner is now an all-pro. Fred Warner is only 24 years old. PFF, in fact, just named Fred Warner the top player under 25 in the entire NFL. And here's the big thing about Fred Warner. The 49ers have played 51 regular season and playoff games since Fred Warner joined the team in 2018. Fred Warner has been available for 51 of those games. 100%. On a team where everybody's complaining about durability, and rightfully so, because durability has been an issue, Fred Warner has played 51 out of 51 possible games. He's also the quarterback of the defense. He wears the radio in his helmet. He gets the 49ers lined up. He can cover. He can play the run. He's improved every single season, and his trajectory has now led him to all-pro status and durable all-pro status where he's playing every single game. If you're the 49ers, a team that's immensely talented but has dealt with big-time injury issues that have now derailed 2 of the past 3 seasons, what is there not to like about an all-pro who plays in 100% of his games? And that's Fred Warner. And that, my friends, is why I believe Fred Warner needs to be at the top of this list. Now, it's going to be complicated, though, because Indianapolis has a young linebacker who was drafted in the same year as Fred Warner named Darius Leonard. Now, Darius Leonard has more all-pro appearances than Fred Warner. 2 first-team all-pro appearances, 1 second-team all-pro appearance. So he's more decorated than Fred Warner. I'm not saying he's better than Fred Warner, but he's more decorated. So Leonard might have slightly more negotiating power at the table with the Colts than Warner does at the 49ers. Still, the people that I talk to all believe that both Warner and Leonard are worthy of resetting the linebacker market and topping the list that you see here. Okay, so now you have two guys vying for the contract. So the question becomes, who goes first? Well, that, I think, is going to be what determines who holds the title at the top of the list. The last time that we saw something quite like this might look like is in 2016, when a bunch of tight ends at the top of the game needed a new contract. Zach Ertz went first. Travis Kelce went a day after him. Jordan Reed went about 4 months after both of those guys. If you'll notice, an average per year, all of those contracts one-upped each other. Zach Ertz, $8.5 million. Travis Kelce, $9.2 million. Jordan Reed, $9.7 million per year. So why was Ertz willing to go first if he knew that Kelce and Reed would just use his own deal as leverage? Well, look at the fully guaranteed money. Ertz got more fully guaranteed money than Kelce, who went the next day, by almost $3 million. Jordan Reed then beat both of them, but he had 4 months to do it. So I think that it's going to be like a game of chicken between Fred Warner and Darius Leonard. The guy who signs first might need to be incentivized by more fully guaranteed money to do so, and he'll need to be okay with not being the leader in average per year. I think this works for the 49ers, and right now I'll explain why. The 49ers are in a position where the only way they can fit Fred Warner into their 2021 cap situation is by giving him a lot of guaranteed money. Why? Because for a maximum of 5 years, you can spread a signing bonus, which is obviously guaranteed money, over those 5 years with the cap. So I think the 49ers want to give Fred Warner as long of a deal as possible, and 5 years is the limit that you can do as far as spreading the cap hit. I think the 49ers definitely want to do that, and they want to give him a lot of guaranteed money so they can minimize the 2021 salary cap hit. George Kittle last year got a signing bonus of about $20 million, and we often compare Fred Warner and George Kittle, two versatile players drafted a year apart, not first or second rounders. Warner's a third rounder, Kittle's a fifth rounder. They've both outplayed their rookie deals after 3 years. They both want that new contract early. They're both all pros, and they're both going to potentially reset the market. Kittle did last year. The difference between Warner and Kittle is that the linebacker market is much more lucrative than the tight end market had been. Although Kittle blew away the prior precedent in the tight end market, I don't think Fred Warner is going to blow away the linebacker market just because Bobby Wagner is already at $18 million per year. So when you look at Kittle's $20 million signing bonus, I think you can easily envision a $30 million signing bonus for Fred Warner. And this signing bonus will be $30 million divided by 5 years for a cap hit of $6 million per year. If you give Fred Warner just a minimum salary in his first couple of seasons, that's going to be somewhere around $1 million. You could keep that cap hit at $7 or $8 million for the 2 years where the 49ers are tightly crunched between 2021 and 2022. Why would Fred Warner be okay with this? Well, he'd be okay with this because he gets $30 million right away in his bank account. So it's a trade-off, right? It's a trade-off. You say, hey, Fred, here's $30 million right away in your bank account, signing bonus. You're going to take the minimum salary, base salary for the next 2 seasons, but you're okay because you have $30 million in there. And then by year 3 in 2023, when the cap rises, that's when you give Fred Warner a $14 million base salary, something like that. You could incentivize it. You can guarantee part of that too. He may overshoot CJ Mosley with those guarantees, maybe $44 million. You know, that's just kind of how contracts work. And you make it work. So that's how you can fit Fred Warner in a tight 49ers salary cap situation. You give him a very large signing bonus. It requires Jed York to be willing to shell out cash, no doubt about it. But so far, Jed has been willing to do that to keep this 49ers roster together. Big signing bonus, long deal. You lock up Fred Warner. It's as simple as that. And to make the room that I talked about in that salary cap situation, a little bit earlier. I guess I should share the screen one more time. Go to this window. To make that room, you do this. Because I said, obviously we mentioned the 49ers only had $4.5 million of room, and you give Fred Warner an extension that costs $7 or $8 million, all of a sudden you're at nothing, right? Because it's already, you tack on $4 more million to his cost. I think the most logical option is to extend, or not extend, to restructure this guy right here, Eric Armstead. $12.5 million is an awfully high cap hit for this season. I'm not saying that Eric Armstead doesn't deserve the money he has, but the cap hit doesn't work with the 49ers numbers if they're trying to extend Fred Warner. And because they really believe in Eric Armstead as a long-term fixture, 49ers can redo his deal by converting some of his base salary to signing bonus and lowering that cap hit by about $4.5 million. Coincidentally, $4.5 million is exactly the savings they would need to extend Fred Warner. I don't think that you redo Jimmy Garoppolo's deal because you want to maintain option power and flexibility with him moving forward. The 49ers love that option power. Jimmy Garoppolo's on a great contract for this team right now. It's exactly what they need. It's exactly worth what he can bring to the table for them, and it's easy to get out of. So why would you restructure that deal at a cost of losing flexibility? I don't think that you try to restructure a 30-year-old Jimmy Ward. And I'm also not sure, and we're going to go back here to the depth chart, if you extend Laken Tomlinson. Because yes, by extending Laken Tomlinson, you can open up some cap space, as you have here in the interactive spreadsheet. But that also means you're committed to Laken Tomlinson beyond 2021. And they just drafted Aaron Banks and Jalen Moore. I think the 49ers might want to see how Aaron Banks and Jalen Moore play their rookie season before doubling down on a commitment to Laken Tomlinson. So that's just my view of the whole thing. Check out the link at the top here. It's pinned up there. What might Fred Warner's potential new contract look like? Actually, I could pop it open. That's awesome. That's really cool. There you go. My big breakdown this morning of Fred Warner's potential new 49ers contract. But this StreamYard app is crazy. I didn't know I could do that. Well, I'll keep that under me for the time being. Let's take some questions, and then I'm going to go swim. Do you recommend getting it done earlier than Leonard, asks Nate Thomas. I do. I personally recommend getting it done earlier than Leonard. That's also going to depend on Warner's camp. Do they want to get it done earlier than Leonard? If Fred Warner wants to win the average per year title, he'll wait out Leonard. And it's going to be a game of chicken. The deadline last year for George Kittle was before training camp. I don't know if that's the case for Fred Warner or Darius Leonard, but it's a soft deadline. I think everybody wants financial security before training camp starts. If you really care about average per year, you're going to wait out the other guy. You'll play that game of chicken until you die, basically. But in a lot of ways, average per year is a vanity contest. I think that locking in that deal, getting the fully guaranteed money, which might be a way to get it done sooner because that's the 49ers stand to benefit from giving Fred Warner more fully guaranteed money. I think that's the smarter way to go. So I would recommend Warner getting it done sooner. And, unless he really cares about that average per year, you're just going to get passed up by somebody else anyway in a couple of years. Yeah, I do think it has to be Armstead. Roberto Guerra. And he also asked, but would love to get your take on why they didn't pay Buckner. Okay, we'll finish with this. This is a good thing. They couldn't have afforded to pay Buckner and Armstead. They had to pick one. They would be, they just would be over they would have had to make cap cuts like the Rams have had made this season, which will make the Rams defense weaker. I mean, you'll see how the Rams cap, I don't want to say mismanagement because it was intentional. They're superstar oriented, but this is the first season that it caught up to them where they had to cut a lot of guys on the defensive end. So the 49ers just don't want to be in the situation where they're having to jettison players just to fit under the cap. And they would have had to do that if they signed both Buckner and Armstead. So when they had to kind of pick between the two, they weren't just picking between the two. They were also realizing that by parting ways with Buckner, they were going to get a first-round draft pick in return. They weren't going to get a first-rounder in return for Armstead. And Armstead was also going to be about $5 or $6 million cheaper, right? I think 4 to 5 per year, but the way they structured Armstead's contract, much more favorable to the team. They could run the restructure. So they saved money for another player, another veteran, like another good veteran, through keeping Armstead, and they're able to get a first-round draft pick. They got Kinlaw. So it wasn't an Armstead for Buckner swap, right? It wasn't it wasn't pick one or the other. It was pick Armstead, another veteran or several veterans with the extra money, and Javon Kinlaw with the first-round pick, or Buckner. You're only but you're not getting anything for Armstead because he was going to be a free agent. So it's not a one-for-one swap. It's a lot of guys, including Armstead or Buckner, or just a one. And I honestly think that move is ridiculously criticized. I mean, I criticize the 49ers all the time, but not for stuff that is completely unwarranted. And that's a really, I'm not talking to the questioner here, but, I see a lot of clickbait and stuff out there that just doesn't make any sense, that doesn't consider the big picture financially of the 49ers decision regarding DeForest Buckner. Not to mention that, as good as DeForest Buckner is, the 49ers have an edge-oriented pass rush. I mean, they bulked up the interior depth this year, but it's about what Nick Bosa can do, about what Dee Ford might be able to do, about what Arden Key might be able to do. Obviously, they signed Samson Ebicom this offseason. So that edge-oriented pass rush is where it's at, and Eric Armstead contributes both inside and outside. Okay, fine. I'll answer this final question since this is contractually themed, and then I got to go. Do you think that Bosa and his agent would want to redo his contract next offseason? Bosa has a big year, comes back from his ACL, absolutely. And you know what that would do? It would be super interesting. It would mean that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, in their 5 years with the 49ers, will have potentially paid 4 players the record amount for their position group in their 5 seasons. It started with Jimmy Garoppolo in 2017, highest paid quarterback at the time of signing his deal. It actually came in 2018, but he played in 2017 for the team. Then, obviously, the 49ers paid George Kittle. Now Fred Warner's in line to be at the top of the linebacker market. And now Nick Bosa is going to potentially be in line to be at the top of the defensive line market next season. So that would be 4 players getting paid at the top of the league at the time of signing by the 49ers in the 5-year tenure of the team. And that's a good thing. That means that the players that are worth paying that you have on your roster. So as much complaining as there has been about, the 49ers early drafts, they were able to get a max player out of the 2017 draft in George Kittle. They might have a max player out of the 2018 draft in Fred Warner. They might have a max player in the 2019 draft in Nick Bosa. And hey, maybe Brandon Ayuk is going to turn up the Jets and he'll be a max player by the time he can get paid. Who knows? But that's a problem you'd like to have, because you can find a way to work the salary cap a bit, and it's going to blow up in 2023. And that's going to be good for the 49ers and teams that like to spend some money. Anyway, thanks, guys. Check out the article. It's right underneath me. I don't know if you could click on the link there, but even if you can't, then I'm going to turn it off. Yeah. So that way you could see me and I could say bye properly. But check it out. It's on The Athletic. Easy subscription, just a couple dollars a month. And make sure to share this and tell your friends to join the YouTube channel. It's amazing. We have over 1,400 subscribers, and I started this a couple weeks ago. So I would love for this to grow, and I would love for this to become a place where people can interact with me and discuss everything they want to about the 49ers. All right, everybody, have a great Wednesday. Take care.